Okay, let's get right into it. For the last year or so, AI coding assistants have felt like they're absolutely everywhere, right? But are we really using them to their full potential? Today, we're going to break down a really powerful new way to think about these things, all inspired by some amazing insights from Idan Gazet over at GitHub next. We're going to look at this big shift, from AI being a fun little toy to it becoming a tool you literally can't work without.
And this quote right here, it just nails the whole point. We've all seen those slick demos, The AI writes a perfect function from just one little comment. And yeah, that's the toy. It's cool. But the real goal, the thing that actually matters, is creating something you can ship, work that you can actually trust. And that takes a lot more than just some fancy autocomplete.
So, what does that difference really look like day to day? Well, a toy gives you these little standalone suggestions, these clever completions that are neat on their own. But a real tool stitches all that work together. It's not just about interesting demos anymore. It's about delivering outcomes you can rely on and truly automating parts of your workflow. It's basically the difference between a helpful little hint and a full-on reliable partner.
All right, so if we're going to build a real tool, we first have to figure out what the real problem is. And you might be surprised to learn that the biggest bottleneck in software development, it's probably not what you think it is.
I mean, if you ask anyone outside of the tech world, they probably picture a developer just hammering away at a keyboard, typing code all day long. But is that really what's happening? Where does all the time actually go for a professional developer?
And wow, this chart just lays it all out. A crazy 70% of a developer's time is just spent trying to understand and navigate code that already exists. Another 20% goes to tracing back decisions and hunting down issues. And that leaves, only about 10% for actually typing new code? So the big takeaway here is that the problem has nothing to do with typing speed.
So what this tells us is that the biggest wins aren't going to come from a faster keyboard. No way. They're going to come from a context engine, an AI that gets what your project is all about and helps you find, and this is the important part, trust the very next thing you need to do. That's where you save the real time.
Okay, so if the main goal is context, then this whole race isn't just about who can build the most powerful, the most massive language model. It's actually about something way more subtle.
The real competition is all about orchestration. It's about being able to take all the messy stuff, the existing code, the bug reports, the design docs, all of it, and somehow turn that chaos into a clear, actionable plan with steps you can actually follow and trace. It's not about raw intelligence. It's about how skillfully the tool can put all the pieces together.
And this leads us to two fundamental truths that any real AI tool has to deal with. First, latency. That little lag? It's not going away. So a good tool has to be designed around it, maybe letting the AI do the heavy thinking in the background while you keep working. And second, cost and correctness. Those aren't afterthoughts, they're features. The tool has to be smart enough to know when to use a fast, cheap model for an easy task and when to call in the slower, more expensive, but more accurate model for something really complex.
But here's the thing. In the rush to be helpful, a lot of the current AI tools have accidentally created a totally new problem, a new kind of information overload.
Yeah, instead of cutting down on the noise, a lot of AI just turned on a fire hose. You get flooded with suggestions, new tabs, more and more help. But if the tool doesn't have a memory of what you're actually trying to accomplish, all those suggestions just become distractions. It actually forces you to switch context even more than before.
Which brings us to the core solution proposed in all this, an idea to finally bridge this gap between the promise of AI and the reality of using it. Think about your workflow for a second. Most of your productivity isn't lost when you're deep in a single file. It leaks out at the seams, right? At those handoff points between your local code editor, where you're building stuff, and your collaboration platform, like GitHub, where all that work gets reviewed, talked about, and finally merged. This is the gap. This is where the context, the why behind what you were doing, gets lost. It happens when you switch between files, between commits, and especially when you hand your work off to another person.
So imagine this. What if we put a new layer right in the middle? A layer that's designed for one purpose, to hold on to that precious context and carry it across the gap, making sure nothing gets lost in translation. And this layer would have three really simple but totally crucial jobs. First, hold the intent. Every task starts with a clear, plain English goal. Second, prefer plans over paragraphs. Instead of a giant wall of text explaining what it's going to do, it proposes clear steps like analyze this, patch that, now test it. Things a human can review in seconds. And third, make provenance the default. Show exactly what sources the AI looked at, and make absolutely sure every single change is easy to undo. This is how you build trust.
So, what does a world with this missing layer actually feel like for a developer? Well, it pretty fundamentally changes the job itself. The developer's role basically shifts from being a writer to being a reviewer. Your focus is no longer on, okay, I need to type out this code. It's now, okay, I need to approve this change. The center of your world moves away from the raw code and towards the high-level intent and the specific changes, the diffs that get you there. You become the architect, the director, the quality control expert.
And that brings us to this final killer point. The future of AI and software isn't about jamming another chat panel or another sidebar into our editors. It's about creating continuity, a seamless, unbroken flow of your intent and the project's context, from the moment an idea pops into your head all the way to that merged pull request.
So, I'll just leave you with this question to think about. Once our AI assistants evolve from these simple toys into true partners, tools that actually remember what we're trying to do from start to finish, the possibilities just explode. When you're finally freed from that 90% of your work that's just chasing down context, what will you finally have the time and the energy to build next?